I have a challenge for you. I'm going to remove a single random playing card from this deck, and I'll show you all of the other cards. So you have all the information you need to deduce what the missing card is. But the question is, can you do it? You probably don't need to try very hard to realize that this is actually a pretty difficult problem. The reason being is in order to effectively use the process of elimination to deduce what the missing card is, you need to keep track of all of the other 51 cards in your mind simultaneously. And this is more information than the mind can keep in short-term memory at any given time. But as a magician, I've never let a seemingly impossible challenge stop me before. Speaking of being a magician, I could obviously cheat and use sleight of hand to bypass the entire memory issue while still creating the illusion that I have super memory. I could secretly peek a card, do a fake shuffle, and then remove the card that I just looked at. But a spectator might ask if they could be the ones to remove the playing card instead of me, in which case all of that falls apart. So I want to be able to do this for real, and I want to do it as fast as possible. If you've seen any of my other videos, you'll know that I typically create intricate gimmicks to solve these problems. But for this, I'm going to have to rely on a very different set of skills. We need to shift the lens of how we're viewing this problem from a magic trick to a cognitive science problem. Cognitive science is the study of thought, learning, and mental organization. And outside of magic, I actually study cognitive neuroscience for a living. So I'm going to hopefully be able to rely on some of those skills to solve this problem. So here's the plan. I'm going to try to build an algorithm to deduce the missing card that could run on a computer. Then I'll switch out the hardware from a computer to the brain. Running that algorithm on our mind should allow us to deduce the missing card. However, our brain and computers operate in very different ways with different memory capacities, different speeds. So what I need to do is keep in mind that our eventual goal is to run this algorithm on our brain, which means I need to optimize this algorithm for the constraints of our mind rather than a computer. But to at least start making progress on this, let's for a moment pretend that our brain is a computer. One way to solve this would be to create a list of all 52 cards in the computer's memory. Then we would move through the cards in our shuffled deck one by one and cross out each card that we see in the computer's memory bank. Once you go through all the cards, all you have to do is search the memory bank for the one card that hasn't been crossed out. In computer science terms, this algorithm has a speed of what we call order of n. And all this means is that the speed of running this algorithm is proportional to the amount of cards that we're searching. So in this case, because we're searching through 51 cards, since one card is missing, this algorithm has an order of 51, or n equals 51. It also has a memory requirement of order of n, because in order for the algorithm to function, we need to create a list of all 52 cards in memory. Now, obviously, we know that 52 is too many things for us to remember, but this algorithm isn't intrinsically bad, and it could be useful later if we somehow decrease the space requirements. But how much memory do we actually have to work with? How much do we need to improve the space requirements of this algorithm to end up with something that could even feasibly be run on our brain? Well, on average, we can store about 7 pieces of information at any one time in short-term memory. However, this does not mean we can only store 7 cards. The brain has this amazing ability to do what we call chunk information, and you can kind of think of this like data compression. For example, take these 9 letters. Now, 9 is more than 7, so this should be difficult for us to remember. But we can split these 9 letters into groups of 3. We can create chunks of 3 letters. So now instead of having to try to remember 9 letters, you just have to remember these 3 sort of makeshift words of loo, tree, and pole. So going back to our algorithm, we know that our memory capacity that we have to work with is about 7. But this constraint is a little bit flexible because we know we can chunk information to expand that a little bit. So in knowing our memory capacity, this brings us to our next possible algorithm. What we can use is something called a summation algorithm. If we were to go through the deck one by one and add up the values of every card we see, so 2 plus 10 plus 7 plus king, that's 13, go all the way through the deck, we end up with a total of 364. So how does this help us? Well, this one number, 364, contains the information as the entire deck of playing cards. So instead of having to remember every card, we just have to remember this one number, 364. So to find the missing card, what we have to do is go through the deck and add up all of the cards that we see, and then subtract that total from 364. And the result from that equation will be the value of our missing card. So the advantage of this algorithm is instead of having a memory requirement of order of 52, we've effectively reduced that to an order of 1, where the only thing we have to remember is that base value of 364. Now you're probably thinking, yes, this gives us the missing value of the card, but what about the suit? Personally, I think the easiest solution is to actually switch back to the first algorithm that I told you about. But now we've reduced the items that we need to search. We no longer have to remember all 52 cards, we just have to remember 4. The same value of each suit: clubs, spades, hearts, and diamonds. So a quick scan through the deck looking for those 4 cards should very quickly tell you which one is missing. Now, if you're anything like me, trying to do this summation algorithm sounds horribly tedious. Computers are really optimized to do addition and subtraction problems very quickly. Unfortunately, our brain is not. So we have a few algorithms, but this is where we need to stop pretending that our brain is a computer. One thing that the brain is really good at is breaking down a problem into smaller, more manageable pieces. So to optimize this for our brain, what we need to do is use all of these different algorithms at different stages of processing. We're going to break down our one big problem into several smaller problems to complete consecutively. So instead of trying to figure out what the missing card is, what if we just tried to figure out the color of the card? Red or black? This is pretty easy to figure out if we use a simplified version of the summation algorithm. We'll assign red cards to 1 and black cards to 0. And now when we go through the deck, we essentially just count all the red cards. In a complete deck of cards, there's an even amount of red and black cards, 26 of each. So if we end up with 25, we subtract 25 from 26, which equals 1, and we assign 1 to red cards, which means the missing card is red. If the total is 26, then we do 26 minus 26 equals 0, and we assigned 0 to black, so we know the missing card is black. This was a very complicated way of just saying count all the red cards. If they are all there, then you know the missing card is black. Now we can ignore half the deck. We've reduced our search field from 52 down to 25. So let's do this process again, but this time with the suit of the card. So let's say the missing card was red. Well, in a complete deck, there's 13 diamonds and 13 hearts to make up the red cards. So we just pick one of them, let's say diamonds, count all the diamonds. If they're all there, we know the missing card is a heart, and if they're not, then obviously it's a diamond. With this second step, we've reduced the possible missing cards from 52 to 13. And even better, we've done it relatively quickly because humans are much better at counting than they are at doing math. Now that we're down to 13 cards, we have some options of different algorithms that we can employ. In fact, we could use the first algorithm of creating a list in memory. When we first tried to use that algorithm, it was obviously impossible because we would have had to create a list of 52 cards in memory. But now we're down to 13. And 13 is more than that 7 space requirement. But remember, we have this super cool ability to chunk information. If we create chunks of 2 playing cards, the items we have to remember is reduced from 13 in half to 6.5. Now, we can't have half a piece of information, so we have to round that up. But once we do, we hit that magic number 7. This can be a little bit difficult because you are running up against the edge of your memory capacity. So some practice helps, but if you're still having trouble, you can reduce the number of cards you have to remember by half, again, by counting either the evens or the odds. So that's the algorithm that's optimized well for our brain. The only question that remains is, how quickly can I do it? Something that's important, if you are going to perform this as a magic trick, you don't want to tell people about this method. Instead, you want to create the illusion that you do have this superhuman memory and can remember all 52 cards at once, and that's how you're deducing the card. So after a few days of practice, this is my speedrun attempt of running this algorithm on my brain. Give it a quick shuffle. Take out a random card. All right, and our time starts now. Six of clubs. Let's go. That's my first run under 20 seconds. That's what I like to see. Ah, yes.